When people ask about my parents, I usually tell them they're gone. It's easier that way. Not dead, just gone. Because explaining what actually happened sounds too unbelievable to be true. Most parents leave their children something. Advice, support, an inheritance. Mine left me a handwritten note on a kitchen counter. 3 words. You'll figure it out. I was 17 years old, still legally a minor, still in high school. And when I came home from work that Friday afternoon, my entire family had disappeared. No furniture, no television, no photographs, no clothes. Even the dishes were gone. At first, I honestly thought we'd been robbed. I ran through every room shouting for my mom, for my dad, for my little brother Michael. Nothing. The house echoed. It felt abandoned, cold, like nobody had lived there for weeks. Then I saw the note, folded neatly beside the fruit bowl, my name written across the front. I smiled for about 2 seconds. Maybe they had gone somewhere. Maybe this was some weird surprise. I unfolded it. Emma, we moved. You'll figure it out. No address. No phone number. No explanation. No, we're sorry. Nothing. Just, you'll figure it out. I must have read it 20 times, waiting for the rest of the letter to appear. It never did. I called my mom. Disconnected. Dad, disconnected. Michael, also disconnected. I sat on the kitchen floor until it got dark, still convinced they were coming back. They never did. The landlord knocked the following afternoon. He looked confused when I answered. I thought they'd already told me. Told me what? They ended the lease. My stomach dropped. When? Last week, they planned this. Packed everything. Signed paperwork. Scheduled movers. Changed phone numbers. And somehow managed to leave their 17-year-old daughter completely in the dark. How long do I have? He looked uncomfortable. About a week. 1 week. To find somewhere to live. Without parents. Without money. Without even knowing why. I spent the first 3 nights sleeping in my friend Rachel's house. She kept insisting I could stay longer, but her parents were already struggling financially. I couldn't become another burden. By the 4th day, I had nowhere left to go. I rented the smallest storage unit I could afford. Used almost every dollar I'd saved from my grocery store job. Every night, after the facility closed, I'd quietly sneak inside, roll out a sleeping bag, and hope nobody found me before morning. During the day, I showered at the local YMCA, applied for jobs using the computers at the public library, pretended everything was normal. Whenever classmates asked why I looked tired, I'd laugh. Studying. Nobody questioned it. At least, not yet. Breakfast became peanut butter. Lunch became peanut butter. Dinner, also peanut butter. Straight from the jar with a plastic spoon. It was cheap. It lasted. Some nights, I couldn't even afford bread. I lost nearly 20 pounds in 3 months. One evening, I nearly fainted while stocking shelves of bread. My manager stared at me. When was the last time you actually ate? I lied. This morning. He didn't believe me. He quietly handed me one of the deli sandwiches that hadn't sold before closing. Store policy says we're supposed to when you look the other direction. I never forgot this. Kindness doesn't always arrive. Pretending not to notice my Harold health insurance, a retirement account, things 17-year-old couldn't even imagine. Then, 2 months before my 30th birthday, I opened my bank account. Balance showed $1,004,381. 7 figures. I stared at the screen, certain there had been a mistake. There wasn't. I started crying. Not because I was finished, because I was saving. I knew nobody would ever meet me homeless during those 12 years. Never said a word. It was as if I had never existed. Sometimes Michael's profile appeared in my social media suggestions. Married with children, living in the same state. I wondered if his wife even knew he had 16, or if it erased me from her story. Eventually, I stopped wondering. Therapy helped. Melissa, my therapist, once asked me, "What hurts the most?" I answered immediately. They never came back. Not once. Not even to see if I'd survived. Last month, I agreed to appear on a podcast about abandonment. I told my story publicly. I expected maybe a few thousand views. Instead, the episode exploded. More than 1 million views and embracing thousands of messages from strangers. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for telling my story. You helped me feel less alone. For the first time, everything I'd survived was actually true. Then, 3 days later, an email appeared in my inbox. The sender's name was my entire life. Linda Parker, my mother. The subject line was "Family Secrets." You still are daughter. 12 years of silence ended with one email. And somehow, I already knew they weren't reaching out because they'd finally found me. They were reaching out because the whole world had. I didn't open it. Not immediately. I simply stared at the screen. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. For 12 years, I'd imagined this moment hundreds of times. Sometimes she'd apologize. Sometimes she'd explain. Sometimes she'd pretend nothing had happened. Reality was somehow worse. Eventually, I clicked. The email wasn't long. No dramatic confession. No tears. No desperate apology. Just a few carefully chosen paragraphs. "We've heard your side of the story. Maybe it's time we talked. You're still our daughter." That was it. No acknowledgement that they abandoned a 17-year-old girl. No explanation. No responsibility. Just, "Maybe we should talk." I closed the laptop, walked around my apartment, made coffee, didn't drink it, sat on the couch, stood up again. My mind refused to slow down. An hour later, another notification appeared. This time, it was Michael, my younger brother, the brother who had left with them. His message was even shorter. "We miss you. Can we fix this?" Fix this? 12 years. 4,380 days. No birthdays. No Christmases. No graduations. No phone calls. Nothing. And suddenly, they wanted to fix it. I didn't answer either message. Instead, I called Melissa, my therapist. She listened quietly while I read both emails aloud. When I finished, she asked only one question. "What do you feel?" I expected anger, hatred, bitterness. Instead, I surprised myself. "I feel confused." She nodded. "That makes sense." They're reopening a wound that had finally started healing. "So what do I do?" Melissa smiled gently. "Nothing." "What?" "You don't have to respond today. You don't have to respond tomorrow. You don't owe anyone immediate access to your emotions." She suggested something simple. Wait 1 week. No decisions. No replies. Just feel whatever comes. So I did. I buried myself in work. Went to the gym. Met friends for dinner. Recorded another podcast interview. From the outside, everything looked normal. Inside, those emails followed me everywhere. Every night, I'd reopen them, read them, close them again. My mother's email bothered me the most. It sounded professional, like she was emailing a former coworker, not the daughter she'd abandoned. Michael's message felt different. Short, awkward, almost nervous. After 10 days, I finally replied. Not to my mother, to Michael. Just one sentence. What changed? I hit send before I could overthink it. His response arrived less than an hour later. He'd clearly been waiting. The podcast changed everything. Hearing what really happened, I realized how badly we failed you. He claimed he'd only been 15, that he hadn't known our parents planned to leave me, that they told him I wanted to stay behind, that I'd be living with a friend's family, that I'd chosen not to come. I stared at the screen. Chosen? I had slept in a storage unit, ate peanut butter straight from the jar, worked 2 jobs before I turned 18, and he believed I chose that. Still, something didn't feel dishonest. Naive. Yes. Convenient. Maybe. But dishonest? I wasn't sure. Then I asked another question. If you wondered about me, why wait 12 years? This time, his answer took longer. When it finally arrived, it was much longer. He admitted he'd searched my name online several times over the years, that he'd found almost nothing, that he always wanted to reach out, but was afraid I'd hate him. Then came the paragraph that made my stomach sink. Things have been difficult lately. Dad's business failed. Money's tight. Jenny is pregnant again. Medical bills are piling up. I stopped reading, closed the laptop, walked straight on my balcony. There it was. The sentence I knew was coming. Not directly. Not yet. But close enough. If they had found me while I was still sleeping in a storage unit, would they have emailed? If I become an average office worker, would they suddenly miss me? Or had they only remembered I existed because I was finally successful? The next morning, another email arrived. From Mom. This one included old family photos. Me as a toddler covered in birthday cake. Michael and I building a snowman. A beach vacation I'd almost forgotten. Pictures from a childhood that looked happy. A childhood I remembered very differently. At the bottom she wrote, "We made mistakes. We'd like the chance to make things right." That afternoon I printed every email, every attachment, and brought them to therapy. Melissa read each one carefully, then looked at me. "What do you want?" "I don't know." She nodded. "Then don't let guilt make the decision before your heart does." She reminded me of something I'd spent years learning. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. You can forgive someone without inviting them back into your life. That sentence stayed with me because somewhere deep inside, a tiny part of me still wanted answers. Not because I believed they deserved another chance, because 17-year-old Emma still wanted to know why her own family had decided she was the one worth leaving behind. So after another week, I made a decision not to meet my parents. Not yet. I agreed to meet only one person. Michael. Just my brother. Public place. 1 hour. No parents. No promises. Well, I didn't know. Was that before our coffee even arrived? He was going to tell me the lie my parents had been repeating for 12 years. A lie so unbelievable. It almost made me laugh. I agreed to meet only one person. Michael. Just my brother. Public place. 1 hour. No parents. No promises. Well, I didn't know. Was that before our coffee even arrived? He was going to tell me the lie my parents had been repeating for 12 years. A lie so unbelievable. It almost made me laugh. I chose a small cafe across town. Neutral ground. Somewhere I could leave whenever I wanted. I arrived 15 minutes early. Not because I was excited. Because I needed time to calm myself down. At exactly 2 o'clock, Michael walked in. I recognized him immediately. He looked older than 27. Tired. Gray beginning to show around his temples. He hesitated before approaching my table. "Emma." I nodded. For a second, neither of us knew whether to hug, shake hands, or simply sit down. We chose the third option. The waitress took our orders. Coffee for both of us. Then silence. Finally, Michael spoke. "You look successful." I almost laughed. "You look nervous." "I am." Another silence. He stared at his coffee. "I don't even know where to start." "Start with the truth." He nodded slowly. "Mom and Dad told me." He swallowed. "They told me you refused to come with us." I blinked. "They said you wanted independence. They said Rachel's family had agreed to take you in. They said you wanted to finish high school without moving." I stared at him. "You believe that?" "I was 15. He looked ashamed. "I asked why you weren't answering my messages. They said you blocked us. I asked why you never visited. They said you hated us." Every answer had already been prepared. Every question already explained away. I leaned back in my chair. I disconnected my phone. His face fell. "I know that now. They left me in an empty house." His eyes filled with tears. "I know. I slept in a storage unit." His hands started shaking. "I didn't know." I nearly dropped out of school because I couldn't afford food. He covered his face. I swear to you, I didn't know. I believed him. Not completely, but enough. Because his reaction wasn't defensive. It was horrified. He looked sick. Then he quietly asked, "Why didn't you contact me?" I stared at him. Ow! Silence. I didn't know where you lived. You had no phone, no address, no family. I was 17. I was trying to survive. He slowly nodded. I deserve that. No. I shook my head. You deserve the truth. Then I pulled the folded note from my purse. The original. I kept it all these years. Creased. Faded. Almost falling apart. I placed it on the table. He looked confused. What's this? The last thing Mom and Dad ever gave me. He unfolded it carefully. His face changed almost immediately. He read it once. Then again. Then a third time. His lips started trembling. No. I stayed quiet. They really... He couldn't finish. They left this. I nodded. He stared at the 3 handwritten words. You'll figure it out. A tear landed on the paper. Then another. I've never seen this before. I know. He looked completely broken. They told me you packed your own things. They said you wanted freedom. They said you were stubborn. He looked at me. They made it sound like this was your decision. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so unbelievably absurd. My decision? I came home from work. The house was empty. I thought someone had died. He closed his eyes. Oh my God. The waitress quietly placed our coffee on the table. Neither of us touched it. After a long silence, Michael asked something I wasn't expecting. Did they ever try to find you? No. Not once. No. He stared into his cup, then whispered. They told me they hired a private investigator. I couldn't help it. I laughed again. A short, disbelieving laugh. They never looked. I know. They told everyone you disappeared. I frowned. What? He nodded. They said nobody knew where you went. They told relatives you wanted nothing to do with the family. Now it all made sense. The cousins, the aunts, the uncles. Not one of them had ever contacted me, because according to my parents, I was the one who vanished. Not them. Michael suddenly reached into his backpack. I brought something. He handed me a photo album. Our family pictures. I slowly flipped through it. Birthday parties. Christmas mornings. Vacations. Then, something caught my attention. The year after they left. Family Christmas. Mom. Dad. Michael. Everyone smiling. One thing was missing. Every photo of me had been removed. Not cropped. Not hidden. Physically removed. Tiny empty spaces remained where my pictures used to be. I looked up. What happened? Michael looked embarrassed. Mom said it would be easier. Easier, she said. His voice barely worked. She said it would help everyone move on. Move on. From their daughter. Like I had died. No. Worse. Like I had never existed. I slowly closed the album. Then asked the one question I'd been carrying for 12 years. Why? Michael looked confused. Why what? Why me? Why did they leave me? He stayed silent for a very long time. Finally, he whispered, I know. My heart stopped. You know. He nodded. I found out last month. What was it? His eyes filled with tears again. It wasn't about money. It wasn't because they couldn't afford another child. It wasn't because they thought you'd be okay. He looked directly at me. It was because of Grandma's will. I frowned. What does Grandma have to do with this? He took a deep breath, then quietly said the sentence that completely changed everything I thought I knew about my family. Mom and Dad believed Grandma was leaving her entire inheritance to you. I looked directly at Michael. It was because of Grandma's will. I frowned. What does Grandma have to do with this? He took a deep breath, then quietly said the sentence that completely changed everything I thought I knew about my family. Mom and Dad believed Grandma was leaving her entire inheritance to you. For several seconds, I honestly thought I'd misheard him. What? He nodded slowly. They were convinced you were Grandma's favorite. I almost laughed. My favorite. Grandma loved all of us. She treated birthdays the same, Christmas the same. She even kept identical savings bonds for every grandchild. Nothing about our family suggested favorites. Michael continued. About 6 months before you graduated high school, Grandma sold her house. I remembered. She moved into a retirement community after Grandpa died. The house sold for much more than anyone expected. I nodded. So, Mom and Dad became convinced Grandma was going to leave almost everything to you. What? He looked embarrassed. Because you visited her every weekend. I blinked. I visited because she was lonely. I know. You barely visited. I know. Dad barely called. I know. He kept repeating the same words. I know. Apparently, he'd spent the last month realizing how wrong everything had been. He explained what happened. One night, our parents argued after visiting Grandma. She had praised me. Not because I was smarter. Not because I earned more. Simply because I always made time for her. According to Michael, Mom interpreted that conversation as proof. Dorothy's giving everything to Emma. Dad apparently agreed. Instead of asking Grandma, they started planning. Planning. Like adults discussing a business deal. They convinced themselves something unbelievable. If I stayed behind, eventually I'd inherit the money. And because I was still their daughter, I'd share it. But if they stayed, Grandma might change her mind. I stared at him. That makes absolutely no sense. I know. They literally abandoned one child because they thought she'd eventually become rich. Michael nodded. I know. I rubbed my forehead. So, they gambled 12 years of our family. On an inheritance? His silence answered for him. Then he said something even worse. There wasn't even an inheritance. What? Grandma spent most of her savings paying for medical care. I froze. When did they find out? After she passed away. So, they destroyed our family. For money that never existed. Michael looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. Yes. I couldn't speak. I honestly couldn't. Because no explanation could ever make that decision logical. Not greed. Not fear. Not desperation. Nothing. Eventually I whispered, did they ever regret it? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked out the cafe window. Finally he said, I think they regretted losing the money. That sentence hurt more than anything else. Not me. The money. Then he quickly added, I think they regret losing you now. I looked at him carefully. Now, he nodded. After the podcast. Exactly what I suspected. Not after a year. Not after 5. Not after 10. After millions of people heard my story. After strangers praised my resilience. After newspapers started sharing clips. After people began calling me inspiring. Now, they remembered they had a daughter. I asked quietly, do they know you're meeting me? Michael hesitated. Too long. My stomach dropped. They know. Did they ask you to come? He looked away. Yes. I stood up. I knew it. Emma. No. I picked up my bag. You told me this was just us. It was supposed to be. What does that mean? He looked panicked. They wanted to apologize. I laughed. Today? No. They're nearby. Nearby. I slowly turned toward the cafe window. Across the street, parked in a silver SUV. Saw my parents. Watching. Waiting. Mom immediately smiled when she saw me looking. She actually waved. Like we were meeting for lunch after a normal week apart. My entire body went cold. Michael stood quickly. I didn't know they'd park that close. I looked at him. You lied to me. I know. I'm sorry. You promised. I know. For 12 years. They never once came looking for me. Now, they couldn't even respect the one boundary I'd set. I started walking toward the exit. Michael followed. Please. Just 5 minutes. I stopped beside the door. Without turning around, I asked one question. If I were still sleeping in that storage unit, if I were still working 2 minimum wage jobs, if nobody had listened to my podcast, would they be sitting in that parking lot today? Silence. A long, painful silence. He never answered. Because he couldn't. I opened the cafe door. Stepped outside. My parents immediately got out of the SUV. Mom already had tears running down her face. Dad looked older than I remembered. For a brief second, all 4 of us simply stood there, 12 years apart, separated by one parking lot. And then, my mother took a step toward me, opened her arms, and said the one sentence I'd waited my entire adult life to hear. We've missed you so much. The problem was, I no longer believed a single word she said. For a brief second, all 4 of us simply stood there, 12 years apart, separated by one parking lot. Then, my mother took a step toward me, opened her arms, and said the one sentence I'd waited my entire adult life to hear. "We've missed you so much." The problem was, I no longer believed a single word she said. I didn't hug her. I didn't move. I simply looked at both of them, trying to find something familiar. Anything. All I saw were two strangers who happened to know my name. Mom slowly lowered her arms. Dad cleared his throat. "You look well." I nodded. "I am." Another awkward silence. Finally, Mom smiled weakly. "We've watched your interviews. I figured. We're so proud of everything you've accomplished." I couldn't stop myself. "Proud?" She blinked. "Yes. You don't get to be proud." Her smile disappeared. "You weren't there. When I graduated, when I got my first apartment, when I started my company, when I hired my first employee, when I became financially independent." I looked directly at both of them. "You didn't build any part of my life. You only missed it." Mom's eyes filled with tears again. "We know we made mistakes." Mistakes? I almost laughed. Forgetting my birthday is a mistake. Buying the wrong Christmas gift is a mistake. You abandoned your 17-year-old daughter. That's a decision. Dad finally spoke. "We thought." "No." I interrupted him. "I've spent 12 years wondering what you thought. I'm done wondering. So tell me." He looked down. "We believed you'd be okay." I stared at him. "What made you think that?" "You've always been strong." That sentence made something inside me snap. I became strong because you left. I wasn't strong before. I was 17. I was scared. I cried myself to sleep every night for months. I slept inside a storage unit. I skipped meals. I worked until my feet bled. You didn't leave a strong daughter. You created one. Neither of them spoke, because there was nothing they could say. Mom reached in her purse. "I brought something." She pulled out a thick envelope. Family photographs. Letters. Birthday cards. Christmas cards. Every one of them unopened. "I wrote to you every year." I frowned. "You never sent them." She looked ashamed. I couldn't. "Why?" She whispered. I didn't know what to say. I looked at the stack. "You knew exactly where to send them?" "No." "So you didn't even look." Silence. Again. Dad finally admitted it. "No." Another long silence. Then I asked the question that had haunted me for years. "When was the first time either of you wondered if I was alive?" Mom immediately answered. "Every day." I looked at her. "No." She looked confused. "If you wondered every day, you would have looked." She started crying harder. I was ashamed. I nodded. I believed that, because shame made sense. It just wasn't enough. Dad suddenly stepped forward. "We know we don't deserve forgiveness." "Correct. We're not asking you to forget." "I won't. We're asking for a chance." "A chance to do what?" He hesitated. "To be your parents again." I actually smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. I don't need parents. I needed parents when I was 17. I needed someone when I was hungry, when I was scared, when I thought nobody in the world cared whether I lived or died. I don't need them now. Those words seemed to physically hurt my mother. She covered her face. "We can't change the past." "No, you can't." Then I softened my voice. "But you could stop rewriting it." She slowly looked up. "What do you mean?" I took the original note from my purse, placed it in Dad's hand. He unfolded it. "Read the 3 words." Then his shoulders collapsed. For the first time, I saw him cry. Not quietly, not politely. He completely broke. "I wrote this." His voice barely worked. "I actually wrote this." Mom stared at the note, then at him. "You told me you left more." Dad shook his head. "I couldn't. He couldn't finish. I was a coward." Mom slowly backed away from him. "You told me you explained everything." I lied. "You told me Emma understood." I lied. "You told me she'd be happier staying." I lied. She stared at her husband as if she were seeing him for the first time. Then she whispered, "You lied to me too?" He closed his eyes. "Yes." The silence that followed felt heavier than anything we'd said all afternoon. Then Michael quietly spoke. "I only learned that last week." I looked at Dad. "So all these years, you let Mom believe I chose this?" He nodded. I couldn't admit what I'd done. 12 years. 12 years built on one lie after another. Dad looked at me. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "I don't. I just wanted you to hear the truth from me." I nodded slowly. "I appreciate the truth." It was the first honest thing he'd given me since I was 17. Then I looked at all three of them. Mom, Dad, Michael, I don't hate you. Mom looked hopeful, but I don't trust you either. And those are two completely different things. I turned to leave. Mom called after me. Emma. I stopped, without turning around. If someday you ever decide you want us in your life, we'll be here. I thought about that for a few seconds, then answered honestly. Maybe. Not yes. Not no. Just maybe. As I walked back toward my car, I realized something strange. For 12 years, I'd imagined this meeting ending with answers. Instead, it ended with something much more valuable. The truth. And sometimes, the truth doesn't heal the wound. It simply gives a name. What I didn't know was that 3 weeks later, my father would make one final decision, one that nobody in our family expected. And for the first time, it wasn't about asking for forgiveness. It was about earning it. As I walked back toward my car, I realized something strange. For 12 years, I'd imagined this meeting ending with answers. Instead, it ended with something much more valuable. The truth. And sometimes, the truth doesn't heal the wound. It simply gives it a name. What I didn't know was that 3 weeks later, my father would make one final decision, one that nobody in our family expected. And for the first time, it wasn't about asking for forgiveness. It was about earning it. Exactly 23 days after our meeting, Marcus, my attorney, called. You just received a certified package. From who? He paused. Your father. I frowned. He sent it to my office. Should I open it? Yes. Several minutes passed while he flipped through the documents. Then he quietly said, I think you should come here. An hour later, I was sitting across from him. A thick folder rested on his desk. Marcus slid it toward me. Your father sold his house. What? He downsized. I looked at the paperwork. The family home. The one they moved into after leaving me behind. Sold. Every signature was there. Every document official. Then Marcus pointed to another page. A bank transfer. $300,000. To me, I stared at the number. What is this? A gift? No. Marcus nodded. He specifically wrote, this is not forgiveness money. It's not payment. Nothing can pay for what we did. It's simply the first thing I've done in 12 years that wasn't selfish. I kept reading. Dad explained he and Mom had sold almost everything they didn't need. The extra cars, the vacation cabin, the collectibles he'd spent years buying. He insisted the money wasn't meant to erase the past, only to return something he believed should have been mine all along. At the bottom, he wrote one final sentence. Whether you accept this or not, I'll finally stop pretending I wasn't responsible. I closed the letter. Marcus waited quietly. What are you thinking? I looked at the transfer confirmation. I don't want his money. Marcus smiled. I thought you'd say that. He handed me another page. Apparently, Dad had anticipated my reaction. If I refused the money, it would automatically be donated to organizations that support homeless teenagers and abandoned youth. He had already signed the paperwork. The choice belonged entirely to me. For the first time, my father wasn't trying to control the outcome. He was accepting whatever decision I made. I thought about 17-year-old Emma, sleeping inside a storage unit, trying to make one jar of peanut butter last an entire week. How many nights would have been different if someone had helped her? Not rescued, just helped. I looked at Marcus. Can we split it? He raised an eyebrow. Ow, I'll keep enough to start a scholarship. The rest. I smiled. Donate it. A month later, the Figure Out Foundation officially opened. Yes, that was really its name, because I wanted those 3 words. To stop hurting. The foundation paid emergency housing deposits for teenagers abandoned by their families. Covered food, school supplies, transportation, small things. The exact things that would have changed my own life. Our very first applicant was a 16-year-old girl who'd been sleeping in her car after her parents kicked her out. When we handed her the apartment keys, she cried so hard she couldn't even speak. Neither could I, because for the first time, something good existed, because of the worst thing that had ever happened to me. 6 months later, I received another letter. Not from Dad, from Mom. Only 1 page. Your father goes to therapy every Thursday now. So do I. We're learning that guilt isn't the same as accountability. For years we kept asking why you wouldn't forgive us. Now we're finally asking why we thought abandoning you was acceptable in the first place. That question should have come first. There was no request to meet, no invitation, no pressure, just an update. I appreciated that. Over the next 2 years, things changed slowly, very slowly. Michael and I rebuilt our relationship first, not because we ignored the past, because we talked about it honestly. He introduced me to his children. My niece asked me one afternoon, "Were you always my aunt?" I smiled. "I was." "Then where were you?" Michael looked nervous. I answered before he could. "I live far away." She nodded happily. "Well, I'm glad you found us." So was I. Eventually, I met my parents again. Not holidays, not birthdays, just coffee. An hour, sometimes 2. We never pretended those missing 12 years hadn't happened. We talked about them. Sometimes we cried. Sometimes nobody spoke. Healing wasn't dramatic. It was awkward, slow, uncomfortable. Exactly the opposite of the movies. People often ask me if I forgave them. The truth? Yes. Eventually I did. But forgiveness didn't erase consequences. They'll never know the 17-year-old girl they left behind. They'll never get those birthdays back. They'll never be the parents who helped me through college, or celebrated my first apartment, or stood beside me when I built my company. Those memories belong to someone else now. To Rachel, to Carol, to my old grocery manager, to strangers who chose kindness when family chose absence. And maybe that's the biggest lesson I learned. Family isn't defined by who shares your last name. It's defined by who stays. When staying is hard. The note my parents left me said, "You'll figure it out." They meant it as abandonment, as a way to walk away. But somehow, those 3 words became true. I did figure it out. Not because they believed in me, because they didn't. I figured out because complete strangers believed I was worth helping, because friends became family, because kindness appeared when I least expected it, and because one abandoned 17-year-old girl eventually realized something her parents never understood. The strongest people aren't the ones who survive alone. They're the ones who survive, and then make sure someone else never has to.